So it was on this specific area and land that the turf houses once existed, which is what Icelanders lived in up until the Danes brought wood, literally, and then the metal sheathing. I don't know for sure what this plaque is for, but I think it commemorates a woman who did something significant, but I can't recall what. She was one of the leaders, early leaders of the feminist movement here in Iceland, which had been very successful, a high percentage. I think something like 36 out of 83 legislators are women, and one woman was the president, which is a honorific title rather than a politically influential title, but for something like 30 or 60 years. An 1876 map. Apparently this area fell into disrepair in the 20th century, and principally because they were going to put a major road through it. Then they abandoned that idea and all these homes have been restored. So this is that big lake, that freshwater lake. This would be River Road here. Underneath it runs the river to the ocean. This was the original site of the original cemetery, evidenced by the gravestones that have been dug up. For example, when that building was built and they excavated, they discovered these 3 large tombstones we'll take a close look at. Interesting to imagine what the life and times of people were like back when the man presumably carved this for this family. And a rather substantial block. Now, perhaps those 3 holes represent ways that it was moved, or maybe that occurred in the excavation of that building. But it's interesting to realize that at one time, the people portrayed here were probably quite important to have had such monuments carved out for them. Here are some additional, more sophisticated headstones that were discovered and moved here in homage. 1827, 1809 early on, 1823, 1802. So not all was lost by these few folks, but apparently every construction here brings up more bones. Skuli Mangason was the, I don't know what you call them, it's when countries give a license to a man or a company to set up a particular location in one of their commanded in one of their colonies, and this was such a man. He did many things apparently for the community, building homes, building for commercial fisheries and that sort of thing. So he was considered to be an important, influential man. On the other hand, the other side would argue he also represented the totalitarian power of the Danes. So that argument wages back and forth apparently in Iceland.
supposed to be fishing lures.
This is the staves of wood from a barrel of some sort, rarely preserved unless immersed in water. This apparently is a facsimile of an original longhouse with walls of stone, which makes sense. But where did the tradition of sub-basement walls of cement that come out of the ground 3 or 4 feet, and then the balance in wood? It was a 10th century hall, inhabited from 930 to 1000 AD. This actually is the original location and the foundations. The space around it was dug away and the building built over it. That's outstanding. Here was where the rear entrance was, where post holes were for inner columns. And the annex was here, apparently. This was a secondary little building. A wonderful way to display this, absolutely in situ. How rare. We have a slight relief 3D model of the scene. So this was the section for food storage. Notice a buried pit there, if you will. This is a clever interactive display. Notice when I touch this, it should convert into something. Yep, there it goes. So there was where the loom was. There's an ante-room behind me on the opposite wall. This is the only known case of animals being stalled in a Iceland village age hall, a practice typical in Northern European at the time. I'm thinking the word stalled. Well, maybe they were stalled. Maybe they were actually kept in stalls as opposed to a burial site. This apparently is giving us the stratigraphy of the design. Bigger stones, smaller stones, and then filled in. This is a model of how it might have looked. So this ante-room here, if that's what you call it, would be over there on that side. And notice a good portion of this is that what I thought was a smaller than. And notice how both of these two elements are quite large. As I pan down through here, try to imagine that about 3/5 of the way down was one building, and then another portion of it was the remainder. As it says, the long hearth of the hall was unusually well made.